Blake, formerly from Sidney Fire. Hi, Brian. And yeah, so he'll be joining us at these meetings in addition to Deputy Harmon as required. So welcome to Mr. Geary. And we will call the April 30th Town of Sidney Emergency Planning Committee meeting to order. Donna, I assume you gave me the thumbs up for the marvelous. To begin, we respectfully acknowledge that this morning's meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the Wasanas First Nations. And at the beginning, look for a motion to adopt today's agenda. So move, second. Donna has all this looked after. Well done, thank you. And if we could have a motion to adopt the September 2024 meeting minutes as circulated. Have a motion for that?
So moved.
So moved. Thank you, Mr. Hissick. Second. And formalities are out of the way. So we'll just jump into old business. And I think just before we do that, little bit of a longer lag between meetings than typical. And when we get into our new business, we'll kind of get a greater understanding about that. But we were just waiting on some grant decisions and a few things that we're going to really influence and dictate our workload from an emergency preparedness perspective. So that's kind of the primary rationale why we've kind of delayed this meeting. So just delving into old business, update on our senior care facilities. They are all good. They went through the cold and flu and season relatively unscathed in comparison with previous years. There was some norovirus that did go through the facilities, but nothing like it has been in previous years. We're not doing too much with them right now because it's the audit season for with Island Health and the extended care facilities. So we're just letting them be, and we'll renew things with them here in a month or so when they have a little bit more capacity. And now I will pass it over to Donna, and she'll provide just a bit of an update on the grants that we're pursuing and where we stand.
As you all know, we have quite a few on the go. So the top one at the moment is the Fire Smart grant. And that was, we applied to get a community wildfire resiliency plan, so the CWRP. We finally have the draft of that, and it'll be going to council on May 12th. Following that, we will take the action from there on our public education and just path as staff is what we will do with the findings from that report. But it'll be nice to have that one kind of wrapped up and move on. Within that grant, Mike and I also just recently attended the Wildfire Resiliency and Training Summit in Penticton and brought back some useful information as far as different lenses to look at for emergency planning, like wildlife and just better working with our mutual aid neighbors and Indigenous partners. The other grant we have going on is we were approved for $40,000 through a UBCM grant for volunteer and composite fire departments. And we're using that to go towards turnout gear and new nozzles, I believe.
That's correct.
I think Mike just ordered those last week.
Yes.
Another one as well is we have ESS funding. So we are using that primarily for recruitment. Our ESS team at the moment has advocated that although they're a strong core, they could use some more help. So their on-duty team is feeling a little bit tired from being on call all the time, would like some support. So a lot of that funding is going to be going towards just advertising for new recruits and public campaigns. We've also applied for another EOC grant funding stream. So as most of you know, we're going to be doing EOC training here in May, and that was off the previous stream. So we have applied for another one for 2025. Haven't heard yet if we've got it. We've also applied for Next Gen 911 funding, and that one was for $100,000. The money for that's primarily going to be towards the tablets to actually bring it in, but I don't know if Chief, you had anything more on that.
I haven't heard anything.
You haven't heard anything, and yeah, it's basically just for the actual hardware to incorporate.
And who's the funder for that one?
That one's UBCM as well. Yeah. And then I'm going to let this kind of lead into Chief's next topic, but we did get approval for also the Disaster Resilience and Innovation Funding Stream for $176,000 for the disaster water supply. Yeah, that's it for our grants at the moment.
That's a lot. That's great.
Yeah. It's a lot. Yeah.
Is Blackwell the consultant for the?
No, we went with Diamond Head.
Okay.
Mhm.
So just thank you, Donna. That's I want to especially thank Mike, Chief Harmon and Donna, who are kind of our grant gurus. And grant money is great, but obviously it comes with a bunch of legacy work that we have to kind of manage and constantly think about. Some are relatively low hanging fruit. For example, the firefighter equipment. The provision is basically it takes some of the weight off of our capital expenditures, and because we can purchase turnout gear and a few other things like that, and those are the kinds of fixed costs that we don't really have any choices. Firefighter turnout gear must be replaced every 10 years, whether it's used once or 100 times. It's just basically it degrades over 10 years at a time, and you must replace it. So there's a fixed replacement schedule, and we budget to replace anywhere between 3 to 6 sets a year, depending on where we are in the cycle. So when we can access this kind of grant funding, it can free up our capital budgets for other areas that we're kind of falling behind in. So that's kind of, again, the low hanging fruit. And then some of the other things that are obviously take a little bit more time, whether it be EOC grants or things like that. We have to do them, but again, there's a little bit more time there. But I just want to thank Mike and Donna for spearheading that. And then on the wildfire side, it's going to be nice having Chief Geary here coming from Christina Lake. He's a certified wildfire mitigation specialist. So we'll have a kind of added layer of expertise there to deal with those kind of things, even though our risk in Sidney is we have the odd bark mulch fire, and it's tough to burn concrete. We don't have a lot of risk. I mean, we do have some, but not a lot. But really, it's embercast and issues with our neighbors that are really going to pose concerns for us. So we'll continue to work there. And then Donna, if you just want to provide us a brief update on our Indigenous engagement funding and requirements as well.
Yeah, so we're in the midst of using the $45,000 that we received for year one funding. We had the 2 full day sessions, April 17th and April 24th at the Community Safety Building, putting staff and elected officials through, sorry, the name's escaping me, but the local government Indigenous relations training that we partook in. So next we have 2 night sessions for our volunteer fire department members as well as our PEMA members, which will be happening next week. And then following that, on May 21st, we have the 3rd session that we're offering to staff and elected officials. Going from there, we'll look at if we want to be using year 2 funding and keep that conversation going. But I hope everybody has found the training helpful and beneficial. So we're using that up.
Any questions on old business before we jump into new business? Marvelous. Donna did allude to it, our disaster water supply project. So it's underway. We've signed a cost sharing agreement with the province for $176,000, and that basically augments or offsets the $225,000 that we already set aside through the BC Growing Communities Fund. So ideally, it's going to supplant or take a large chunk of the money that we did have set aside of the BC Growing Communities Fund. Hopefully that after everything's said and done, we'll be able to relocate a significant chunk of that to other uses, which is ideal. But still, we'll definitely need some of those monies to complete the project. We're in Donna, you can probably jump in here. We've been provided, obviously, like I say, we've executed the contract with the province. There's pretty strict requirements in respect to going out and providing, public statements saying that we've been awarded it, et cetera, et cetera. And we're getting close, but we're just not there yet where the provinces, they're kind of lagging a little bit in respect to permitting the communities that have been awarded the drift grant saying, yay, we got the money, we're going to execute project XYZ. Hopefully that's in the next week or so. Yeah. You would hope. So that's why you haven't seen anything in respect to, a press release or something like that. We haven't, again, we've executed the contract. I don't believe you've received a $1,000 check lately from the province for drift funding. No? Okay. Otherwise you'd be in Mexico or something. But anyways, so when that happens, we'll we'll forge ahead.
I
So.
strongly object to the Mexico route.
All right. Still, many tasks are underway. Working with engineering, working with development services, and a bunch of things in respect to requirements for obviously water flows and where we're going to set up these things. And there are the CPOD sites have been identified, and the CPOD sites we call them community pods of water distribution. And the goal is to provide 54,000 liters of potable water to Sidney residents a day. And breaking that down is a population of 13,500. And then you use the UN disaster water requirement of 4 liters per day, and that's how we end up at 54,000 liters. So spread across 3 sites. There'll be 2 on the east side of the highway and 1 on the west. So we're working on all those, and once we get things are a little bit more public, we'll start looking at those things. But lots of work is going on in the background in respect to siting and zoning and a bunch of other things. These CPODs will have manifolds and portable bladders stored in sea cans at these 3 strategic sites that will allow us to tank water to these sites and then provide public distribution through a water manifold at these 3 sites. And we've done all the math repeatedly. Joe's checked it twice in respect to shuttling water times to the 3 sites and actually getting that volume of water delivered in the day, but more importantly during daylight hours. So that's where we are. Yes.
In this, is there any provision for containers for individuals who say don't have containers to?
We are providing plastic bags. There's and again, we're not the first community who's done this. Particularly if you look at what happened in Auckland, in Christchurch, in New Zealand, there's specific rugged or purpose-built plastic bags that are made for holding 4 liters or approximately 42 or 32 pounds of water. So they're purpose-built bags, and we're going to buy them by in lots of 10,000, and they'll be stored in the CPOD sites as well. So residents will simply come, access one of the spigots on the manifold, fill their bag, be provided their bag, and then they can take that water, and that's their water for the day. So yeah, we have that looked after, but that's a good question. Any other questions on our disaster water supply project? Yes.
Public engagement, 4 liters of water per day. I mean, we also encourage everybody to have their own water storage.
100%.
Type of thing. Again, that'll buy us a little bit of time because it's going to take a while to ramp up. If that first week of chaos happens and people are able to provide for themselves over the internet.
Yeah. So that's another great question, Brian. So in my office, there's a Gantt chart that goes probably about 6 feet across the wall, and that was part of a bunch of work packages that Jim Lamort identified. And then once we get to we're in the kind of the early scoping and procurement phase, and then when we get into June, and we've already sat down with Laura for a few meetings, there is a fairly robust kind of public engagement and education program that'll go out and again reinforce all of those type of things. Again, we're kind of in this awkward little phase where we've been awarded it. The provinces said, yes, you have it, but please don't go public yet because whatever benchmarks are required. So we're in a bit of an awkward limbo, but that is definitely, it's on the schedule for June. Whether it happens in July, I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, that's very much planned.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So what we have to remember with these grant projects is, the initial purchase is on somebody else's dime, but then we have to plan for replacing it down the road. So it's free now, but it won't be free down the road unless we're lucky enough to get more grant funding.
Andrew's 100% correct that it's great to acquire things through grant funding, but the legacy maintenance costs will rest with the town going forward. That said, under the Emergency Program Act and the Disaster Water Act, we are required to deliver water to residents. The CRD delivers water to our border, it's our responsibility to deliver water to the residents. So whether it costs or not, that's still a legal requirement the town has. So this is probably the least expensive and we'll be the first to do it. But that is a requirement and there's no escaping that. So.
Or a comment about all
No,
grants, not just this one.
I agree with you. No,
Yeah.
I'm the first person
Yeah.
to say that about grants, that the legacy costs are, that is a very valid point. Any other? Yes.
Are the manifolds similar to, are they going to be similar to the CRD drop kits that some public works staff already received some training on that a couple of years ago, but, or is there going to be follow-up training for the volunteers or fire department?
Well, right now, fortunately, our new deputy chief is also a trade certified plumber. So he's been tasked with taking the CRD drop kits, which are kind of spec'd on a much smaller delivery scale and basically kind of upsizing it to a manifold that'll deliver the volumes at the 3 sites that we require. Actually, we'd had a meeting just before this, kind of looking at preliminary drawings of this, how that'll go. Once that's done, kind of laddering on what I spoke to Brian about just a minute or two ago, in latter part of June or early July will be our first kind of walkthrough demo, which will involve kind of a staff training and orientation session about use, setup, and all those type of things. That wasn't supposed to happen.
I've looked at that, those kits that DRD has.
Just put your button there. There you go. There you go.
And the system that I'll design is very similar, but I think it'll be a little more user friendly when it comes to the setup on it. It'll be very similar to that system.
Okay, we met yesterday to look at locations at Ranktown Park, and we're wondering, maybe we can talk offline,
100%.
exactly how the water will go from the truck to the bladder to the manifold and like how that actually works. So
Sure.
it'd be great to.
Yeah, 100%. And we'll set all that down. And maybe perhaps, Joe, once you get just preliminary kind of drawings to kind of will allow us to build a spreadsheet for costing, which we just send for approval to the drift folks. That's part of the process. And then they just kind of sign off on that. But as we go through and engineer this, Joe, perhaps would it be best we involve yourself, Jen, or Bruce, or both, or what's your preference?
Potentially all 3 of us.
Okay, perfect.
At different times. We can decide.
Okay. Perfect.
You could at least at the initial stages that we all know.
Perfect. And again, yes. And again, we're still looking at it to, this morning we were discussing the actual length and the size of each manifold. And again, that dictates the size of the C-can that's going to go into. And I think we landed that the 10-footer would be good, which is ideal. We don't want to obviously larger. So we're still in that kind of early scoping process, but we're getting closer. So. Excellent.
Do we exercise it?
100%. Yes. So again, that's all built into July, August, September. There'll be a number of exercises, public interactions, but again, late June, probably early July will be kind of our first walkthrough of this taking water, setting it up, verifying that everything is functional. So we'll go from there. Any other questions? Marvelous.
Well, actually, sorry, I could go on. Yeah, just curious about like the residency time.
Yeah, and we have a bunch of information from Island Health and how long we can cycle those things out and those things. So that's been contemplated as well. So yes, we don't want to make anyone sick.
No,
That's not the goal. That's not the goal. Yeah. So the next one you see here is our extreme weather response shelter project. So considerable work has been done. A lot of information gathering has been done, and Donna and Chief Harmon were tasked, and they have done interviews and spent days up in Cowichan Valley and as well as in Souk, looking at the various shelter sites and measures in which they provide extreme weather shelter sites in the Cowichan Valley and Souk. And then they've also spoke with and had Zoom meetings with folks from Nelson, Nanaimo, Salt Spring, North Vancouver, and Comox, and tried to look at analogous service delivery models for extreme weather provision sites. So that would be accurate, Donna. So, and I think the report they provided was excellent. But the big takeaway is that each community is vulnerable population, and probably most importantly, its capacity to provide or facilitate an extreme weather response facility is unique. And it's become clear that our original plan of an NGO providing this service through the context of BC Housing is definitely our best path forward from for our requirements, but also our financial ability to provide it. So we continue to work diligently to find a suitable location and an NGO to operate it. We definitely have some options that we're pursuing. But I want to take this time just to highlight that, council passed a motion that staff move forward with pursuing the establishment of a BC Housing extreme weather response shelter site, and continued, and also pursue having this in place for, this winter of 2025, 2026. We are actively working on that. But at this point, to say that having that in place for this winter is a certainty would not be accurate. We're definitely pursuing it. It definitely could happen, but I don't want to say that there's no guarantees as we stand right now based on where we stand. So I just wanted to kind of get that clear and kind of move forward on that, and we'll provide other updates as we move forward. So, are there any questions on that? That's my Miranda statement about extreme weather response shelter sites. Donna has spoken about PMO recruitment, as well as you just want to expand a little bit more on EOC training, Donna? Do you have
Yeah, and even just the PMO recruitment, maybe just to back up, the main rationale for this is we had a director for 6 years and she stepped down. We knew it was coming, but it kind of came quick and with little notice. So we are fortunate to have a volunteer who stepped in as the interim director, but he's also made it quite clear that he's doing this to help us out. He doesn't want to be the permanent director. So there's certainly a need, and the team is status quo at the moment, but there is a need for volunteers. So hence the big push on that. EOC training, I don't have a whole lot to update other than you'll be receiving the calendar invites shortly. I'm just still kind of shuffling some staff members around on finalizing dates and assigning roles, but there's not a whole lot to update other than it's happening, and we appreciate your support and attendance in advance.
Thank you. Marvelous. I'm sure everyone's looking forward.
Only half day.
It's all good. It's actually a good thing.
When May?
There's May 6th, 7th, 8th, and 13th and 14th.
I'm looking forward to it.
That's good.
Yes, Liam.
That'll be good.
We are too.
It'll be good. And then I just wanted to throw it out. Does anyone else have any new business? I just have one item, obviously, and it probably links in with the RCMP. Obviously, we're aware of the horrific incident that occurred in Vancouver on the 27th, and I've just kind of flagged it as something to obviously consider. I don't know if there's an updated threat assessment for kind of large scale pedestrian accessible events, and where the RCMP stand in respect to blocking vehicular access to large things or not. But I've kind of flagged that as something to discuss with you.
No, there isn't an updated, as we understand.
Mental health, yeah.
But as Wayne and I discussed it on Monday morning, sort of reinforced for us if we are sitting at this table often and pushing for that. And Brian's folks have been really good about supporting the street market and other events with vehicle-based barricades for any number of events we've had. As we push for that the rationale for that so much more so is the case now that we've seen this live in real time.
Yeah.
Super unfortunate event, but reinforces some of the planning that we're doing.
No, 100%. And, you know, I followed it a bit on social media and it was quite active, you know, in the Sidney group or what have you in respect to that. And a lot of people did applaud the work that the RCMP and the town have done in respect to, you know, placing blocking vehicles and the different things like that. And obviously that's at kind of the key access point at 5th and Beacon. Of course, there's the other, you know, barricades aren't really going to, you know, wooden barricades aren't really going to stop anything. But on the other areas, if someone's committed or even has a medical emergency and they were going to go through a wooden barricade. I mean, those wooden barricades are symbolic in comparison to a vehicle. So, yeah, so as we move forward, when we sit around this table and do event-specific planning, I think this the ability, and if, you know, if it comes with costs to an event organizer, that there's additional cost to set up a town vehicle or at different sites or whatever, maybe that's just the cost of putting on that event in this new environment.
The provinces also announced that they're going to set up a independent commission to look at the incident itself, but also providing best practices going forward for public events of this nature. And they expect the report to be completed by the end of June. And the city of Vancouver is also undertaking their own review, of course, but would likely come out with additional recommendations for, because it is a really important issue that I think will resonate throughout the communities in BC and beyond about feeling safe and attending these types of events. So we'll definitely keep our ear to that and, you know, bring it to this table.
Well, just for your knowledge, and Jen and I worked pretty diligently with a consultant to actually create a kind of market or large scale event kind of response plan, and it would almost be like an organizing process for an application process that did all that risk assessment specific to events in Sidney based on size and scope and risk. And then COVID came. And it's kind of this stat in stasis. So that's something we could we have something on the shelf that we could put back and we really should do. But again, other little things have kind of got in the way, but that's something we can easily dust off and make an action item. But we have that existing already. So I think we're ahead of the game there, and it speaks to those things. So that's why part and parcel we were, I think, ahead in a lot of our larger events. We have these things in place to some extent. So
I think you'll find, based on the Vancouver thing, I'm not sure that the vehicle actually entered into the closed off area. It was just that there were so many people coming to the event. Stuff on the private school property that was outside the market kind of footprint area. I envision what happens when the parade's over and you've got 5,000 people walking over to Iroquois Park for the family fun day, or you know, going down to a fireworks display or something like that, where you're never going to be able to barricade or have some physical things to stop that. If somebody had malicious intent for anything, I think what you can do to prevent that is minimal at the least. So to create all this burden and to put that capacity in place that you must do this, it's probably just going to destroy the availability to have a lot of these events happen. And that's, you know, in my personal opinion, if somebody's in there with a focus and a mindset to do something, you're not going to be.
No, you're never truly going to be able to take right against that completely. Yeah. But I think, like, it's a good thing to discuss. I think
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think a lot of good, a lot of the people, stakeholders at the table today and previous, just to make sure that we're providing as safe a venue as we can. And it's echo Leon's comment that we're looking forward to seeing sort of what reporting comes out in the aftermath.
I did a little bit of work with some of my colleagues in Vancouver, and it is kind of getting a rough overview and some photos and some diagrams. So it happened on East 43rd Street in Vancouver. You're right adjacent to John Oliver Secondary School. And the closest kind of analogy I can provide it, we're all familiar with North Sanet School. There's John Road that kind of goes down the side there. That road was kind of, you can imagine, be similar to that, where it'd be closed off, and they'd use that road and lined food trucks on both sides, and then made that like a pedestrian only road with food trucks on both sides. And the vehicle accessed that where people were walking in between the food trucks. And that's basically what happened. Similar circumstance to that. So you're right. It'll be interesting to see what the report says, but that was kind of what was the circumstance in this particular case. So
Back to last year again, there was that event at City Hall where the guy parked his van in front of City Hall in Vancouver and torched the thing, and there was, I forget how many gallons of fuel that didn't go off but could have. And that's another situation where this individual had a mental health issue that he was dealing with, and the community was aware of that particular person, but they didn't expect that. Dodged a bit of a bullet on that one as well.
100%. And obviously in Sidney, we've never had to deal with anyone from a mental health perspective, but I don't know how many times a year we go to our slightly aged population that has a medical issue or confuses the gas versus the brake pedal, and we find a car parked inside a flower shop or a grocery store or a pharmacy. Like, that is not an uncommon, that happens in Sidney at least 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah, we had an incident, like a criminality incident at the street market a couple of years ago where somebody drove past one of the barricades. It's a man barricade, not a vehicle-based barricade. So yeah, all the risks are there, and just have to sort of learn what we can from this one, hopefully.
Putting a vehicle at either end seems like the sensible thing to do, which we.
Yeah.
It's about risk mitigation.
Yep.
All you're trying to do is reduce the possibility that you can never eliminate it 100%.
We just make it difficult. That's all.
Make it harder and harder.
And again, we're doing that, but I think, we'll awareness, and we can kind of learn and maybe tweak our plan. We'll kind of ahead of the game. So that's where we are. Anything else on that? No. Any other roundtable items? Very good. Well, thank you for all coming today. It's nice to have a short, brief meeting. Have a motion to adjourn. Thank you. There we go. So moved.